What's going on, A.O.E gamers? Today we're going to be jumping into a little bit more Marvel Midnight Suns. What we're going to be going over today is going to be a build guide for Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, one that can really help your team out and is a lot of fun to play. That's coming up next. Welcome back, A.O.E gamers. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Scarlet Witch and putting a build together that can truly maximise her potential. Now, as always, if this content helps you out and if you like what you see, then why not hit that subscribe and bell icon for all the latest in latest gaming. But for now, what we're going to be doing is looking at the Scarlet Witch and seeing which cards tend to work best on her. Now, the Scarlet Witch is obtained a little bit further on in the game, and she is probably one of the toughest characters to actually build. So knowing what she's good at, and why you'll be using her in this style is definitely worth knowing. Now, the Scarlet Witch is, I would say, a little bit on the squishy side. You need to make sure that when you're in battles, you've got a way to give herself either resist or conceal. Otherwise, if she does get targeted, she's going to be going down very, very easily. However, the Scarlet Witch does have a lot of AoE in her kit, and has probably the best marking cards in the game, where they last 3 turns. Another really good thing for Scarlet Witch, cards that are quite underutilised, but I think they have a really good role in this game, and that's cards that kind of warp the mind of the enemies. As you can see here, anyone that's going to be guarding an object or an area, or even a nest mother, in quite a considerable AoE, we're going to be able to make those break that guard and then fight against each other. This can make 1 turn in or 2 turn in some of these enemies much easier. So I'd highly suggest pairing the Scarlet Witch with someone that does very high damage. Probably not falling over in the process like I did here would work ideal. Lastly, one thing not to forget with her is that her combo move, even if you're not going to be using it on the toughest enemy, or if you think it's not strong enough to beat them, don't worry too much, because a great thing about it does give resist. So if you are in a bit of a bind, it's well worth remembering this, because then it's going to make your life a whole bunch easier. Right, so before we jump into a build, as it is Christmas now for anyone that's celebrating it, I have had to probably spend a few extra hours editing this to make it look a bit Christmassy, but hopefully this one hits the mark, so here we go. Right, now that awesome editing's out of the way, we're going to be going into Wanda's build and telling you exactly how we go about things. So for her first card, we've got Hexfield. This one is just awesome for going in and clearing a lot of the low health enemies. You're going to have quite a big area effect if you're doing things right. It's going to give us a little bit of heroism, but the main thing is it's also going to apply invulnerable. So if there's any medium to large enemies in there, then hopefully we'll be able to use someone to take them out. Just stand from here and we've got 2 of this card right here, Quick Toss. Probably one of her better cards, even though it's not the best titled, it does do the business. These 2 cards I've modded so that when you're able to get a KO, you're going to be going into Concealed. This card is quite easy to use. It's got a nice little bit of knockback, it's in any direction, and it's also quick. So it's not going to cost a card play, and hopefully you'll be able to get Concealed. Wanda is one of the squishiest characters in this game, and she's very hard to learn a playstyle with. What we're going with, you want to put her in amongst a big group of enemies, and she's going to be all about doing AoE of some sort or another. When she's in amongst them, her passive kicks in, or she'll be marking them, or she'll be doing something to that effect. Jumping down from here, and we have 2 of Hex Mark. Wanda is actually the very best marker in the game. Although she probably isn't able to do it to the extent of someone like Iron Man, who can mark everything on the map if you mod his superiority card right, but Wanda being able to apply free mark to each enemy in an area is absolutely massive, and by then you should have always taken them out. Having 2 cards with this on means as long as you've got some nice damaging members in your team, you should be able to smash through those enemies and get those card plays back. So 2 of these cards is definitely worth having on. Being able to draw 2 cards when we use this is also going to mean that hopefully we'll get something nice in our deck that can work towards taking out those marked enemies. 100% use this as soon as you can. Unleashed is an absolute must for Wanda. Like I said, pretty much all of her build revolves around big AoEs of some kind, so having Unleashed is an absolute essential. This is going to increase the size of her abilities by 40% for 2 turns, and we've turned this one to 3. This allows us to use it whenever we want, preferably at the very start. You'll want to kick it off with this, because then she's going to be a much more effective team member. Lastly, but not leastly, one of my favourite moves in the game, and that's going to be Chaos Reigns. This, in an area effect, is going to affect all of the enemies that are bunched up there, and it's going to mean that they start to attack each other. There's also a 50% chance that they're going to be doing it twice over. It's a little bit like Mindbender for Hunter, but probably quite a bit better. This is going to allow for a lot of easy damage, but even more than that, it's going to make some of the mission objectives very easy. Anytime there's someone that's guarding an object or guarding an item, for example a nest mother or an artifact, you're going to use this, they're going to come out of shielded, and they're either going to go and attack someone or they're going to attack the person they were actually guarding. Using Unleash before this means you've got a big old area effect and you can get some nice KOs and some nice damage out of this. Putting both of them to 3 works ideal, because obviously then it's not going to cost a card play as well. You can quite easily pick up the objective next turn with someone who does some really big damage. Now there is one card that you might want to look at depending on how you're actually set up, and that's going to be Chaos Field. If you think you're going to be playing Wanda a little bit more reserved, you don't want her to go in amongst all of the enemies, then having this and being around your allies might work in your best interest. This one, when you've got allies near you, it's going to give them 1 resist and recover 127 health at the end of the turn. I found that this one was a nice card to have, but with my playstyle it kind of went against it because I was trying to chuck her in amongst the enemies and then make it so that she was concealed or had some kind of resist on her so that she wasn't getting damaged. The reason for that is that her passive wrong place wrong time, this gives 25% chance to debuff each enemy near Wanda. These debuffs can range from really good to not the best. Obviously we've got a lot of marked going on, so most times you don't have to worry about that, but being able to stun them, being able to apply vulnerable and such can really help you out. With her kit how it is, we're able to apply vulnerable, we've got the random debuffs, we've got an absolute abundance of marking, we're able to disorientate them and make them hit their own enemies, and we're able to go into conceal. I would say if you've got an item or if you've got someone in your team that could also put some kind of resist on her, that would be absolutely amazing just in case you bind. If not, like I said, just rely on this card right here and you should be able to go and conceal as long as you're using it last for her, because you don't want to come out of it because you're using another skill afterwards. But yeah, hopefully that's helped a few of you guys and girls out. She is definitely one of the trickier characters to use and it takes a little while to get used to her playstyle, but as long as you play quite aggressive and you're able to make sure she's not taking that damage, then she can be a lot of fun to play. As always, for all things gaming, for all things Xbox, take care. I'll see you on next day.